Hello, everybody. I'm so excited to be here kicking off Luminary Leaders Women's History Month. I am honored to be with you. My name is Dr. Rosie Ward, and I will say for those of you who are watching this live or the recording, whether you identify as male or female, I am really, really honored to spend some time with you as we celebrate Women's History Month. And I want to take a slightly different approach and want to start by inviting you to just think about something. So if you're in a spot where you can close your eyes, I invite you to do that. If not, that's okay too. How often would you say that you are owning your uniqueness and magnificence and are showing up as your best, fully authentic self? Think about that for a second. And then how often would you say that you hold yourself back in one way or another? If you're like most humans, my guess is that you're probably holding your true self back more than you realize or perhaps would like to admit. We like to pretend we're these strong, badass women, but we're human. And in fact, what if I told you that most organizations are unintentionally paying us for a second job that they never intended and never hired us to do? That second job is impression management. You see, we spend an enormous amount of time and energy trying to look good and favorable in the eyes of others. And what I want to suggest to you today is that what is at the root of impression management started a long time ago. Speaking of history, we're going to go back to the first 10 or so years of our lives. And whether we realize it or not, that say 10-year-old version of ourself is in the driver's seat today way more than we think. Let me tell you a little bit about my history. I grew up as the youngest of 5 girls in a very overachieving family, and I was constantly trying to carve out my own identity beyond the hand-me-downs. I felt so different than my sisters that I was convinced that I had to be adopted. I just knew there was no way I belonged in this family. You see, my sisters were into things like science and band, and they just wanted to watch reruns of Get Smart and Star Trek. And me, on the other hand, I just wanted to dance and I wanted to sing and I watched Facts of Life and Fame. And I kid you not, I walked around for years talking and singing into my thumb like I had a microphone in my hand. Plus, sparkle is my favorite color. And I assure you, it is a color. So I knew that there was just no way that I belonged in this family. And after insisting this, one of my sisters happily fed into the story and told me that I really was adopted and that my next door neighbors were my actual birth parents. I was only about 5 years old at the time, and I instantly believed her. You see, they had dark hair and dark eyes and kind of looked like me, so it made sense to me. Never mind that so did my parents. It was all that I needed to hear to validate my story that I didn't belong, and I was determined to go where I did belong. So that night after dinner, I remember packing up my things. I'm dating myself. I had a Tinker Toys tub and I had my blankie and my pillow and my teddy bear, and I'm all full of stuff. And I'm headed out the door. And I told my sister I was going to run away to live with my real family. I remember I'm sobbing as I slowly walked down the driveway. And I'm guessing my sister must have had an oh crap moment because she came charging out the front door to get me. But rather than say that she was kidding, she said something like, "What are you doing, Rosie? They don't want you. They gave you up, remember? So you might as well just come back inside." And while that stung a little bit, here's the thing is that while I desperately wanted to have my uniqueness honored in my family and not be forced to be the clone of my sisters, I was also seeking a place where I felt like I belonged, which is probably why I was so willing to go live with my neighbors. I was seeking a place where I felt like it was okay to be me and to let my sparkle shine. You see, this is where I'm guessing my impression management journey began. I created a story for myself that I had to work hard and be super productive and accomplish things and be the best at everything in order to be accepted and loved. I thought that that was conditional and that I had to prove that I was worthy and enough. And here's the thing is that story served me well to a point. I mean, I got good grades, I got degrees, certifications, launched a successful business, and more. My friends even had this ongoing joke that I was somehow Wonder Woman. And truth be told, I kind of liked that somehow they thought I was superhuman. So on the outside, I might have looked like I was successful and had it all together. But let me tell you, on the inside, I was exhausted. You see, when this insecure 10-year-old version of me kicks in and I start feeling that need to prove my worth and value, here's what happens. I get into hyper independent, hyper productive, pain in the ass, get stuff done mode. And I take on way more than I can handle. And then it has a cost because on more than one occasion, this has led me to illness. It has led me to injury. Our bodies have a way of shutting us down. And at one point, it nearly eroded my marriage. I mean, think about it. I'm spending all of this energy running around to get the approval and accolades of people who don't really matter. And then here my husband is getting this crappy leftover version of me. And I share all of this because I know that my experience is not that unique. And that's why we're here. So many of us get hijacked by these stories that we created with our insecure childhood selves. It's part of our history. And after working with thousands of leaders and teams, I can tell you that I see some version of this show up with everyone. Here's the thing is in the first 10 or so years of our lives, our brains are downloading programming from our lived experiences and observing our surroundings. So we learn what is right and what is wrong. We learn when to speak up, when to be quiet. We learn when we're going to be accepted or when we'll be rejected. And kind of much like our computers have this operating system that is running behind the scenes, our brains have a similar thing. That programming is guiding everything we do. We are on autopilot way more than we realize. So let me give you a couple examples. Maybe you grew up in a household where it was chaotic and there was a lot of stuff going on. And so now you might have this incredible need to be in control of things. Or maybe growing up, you only received praise for receiving straight A's and being the best. Or maybe it was just kind of expected of you. Or on the flip side, maybe you got in trouble for anything less than perfect. And so now you might have this narrative that you have to excel and prove yourself and be perfect to be worthy. Or maybe you didn't feel like you fit in or you belonged at some point. And so now you might hold yourself back or you might people please because you have this fear of people not liking you or rejecting you. Or maybe something bad happened around you and now you have this self-imposed weight of the world on your shoulders need that somehow you can prevent bad things from happening. That's your responsibility to make sure things happen the way they should. I share these because these are some of the most common ones that we've learned from our research. And whatever it is that formed for you, this is part of the human experience. And the problem with it is that research has found that more than 70% of this programming that we download, that maybe was even sort of true to a point when we were little, is actually fundamentally flawed, negative, and self sabotaging. And this flawed programming forms what's called our psychological immune system. And this forms out of an innate need that our bodies and our brains have to protect ourselves. So think about much like we have this physical immune system that is kind of working unconsciously behind the scenes to fight off disease and infection, our psychological immune system is doing the same thing. It's working unconsciously to protect us from perceived threats. What I mean by that is that our brains don't actually know the difference between a real physical threat, like there's a wild animal charging at me, or a perceived social threat where someone might judge me or reject me or think poorly of me. And so what happens is we put on masks to hide our flaws and inadequacies. We pretend to be something we're not, and we get in our own way of making progress on goals that actually matter to us. So if any of this resonates, welcome to being human. We all do it. And here's what I will say is that I've had the privilege of coaching and mentoring and partnering with some amazing leaders, many of them women or identifying as female. And so I want to talk about this in the honor of Women's History Month for a second, because here's what I will say for women specifically, we know there's a profound difference, especially in traditionally male dominated industries and environments. That need to prove ourselves and hide our humanity, hide our femaleness often prevails at a great cost. But here's the thing, at the same time, there are so many incredible women leaders who have shown us what's possible when we don't let our 10-year-old self hijack us by telling us these stories that keep us safe and small. And so today I could look at many, but I just want to share some lessons from two amazing women that have guided my life that I hope help you as you navigate through this phenomenon of our psychological immune system and self-limiting stories. And the first woman that immediately came to mind was Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She fought tirelessly for gender inequality. And she overcame incredible sexism herself, which I will say so many of my male colleagues find baffling that still exists. But newsflash, yes, it does. Like, for example, a man can speak passionately about something, whereas a woman might be labeled as too emotional or difficult. Or a man can be seen as smart and business minded, whereas a woman might be accused of being calculating and manipulative. And the list goes on and on. So much of what we have available to us today as women wouldn't be possible without RBG. Heck, I wouldn't be a woman business owner without her legacy. But here's the thing, above all, here's what I love about her is she stood true to herself. She owned her uniqueness and let her sparkle shine big time. And when I think of her, I just think she was the epitome of a badass in every way I admire. I have a sparkly badass necklace. It's my favorite. The other woman who has had a profound impact on me is Brene Brown. If you're not familiar with her, look her up. But I was fortunate enough to train with her in 2019 as one of her global certified Dare to Lead facilitators. And I will say the impact that her work has had on me personally, my clients, and now hundreds of thousands of people globally is mind-boggling and truly inspiring. Not only has her work and research helped normalize this messy human experience, but what I love about her is that she personally role models that our work is never done. There isn't a "I've arrived" button where we get to stop stretching ourselves and we get to stop learning and growing because our humanity will keep getting in our way. It's how do we lean in and show up when that happens? And what Brene has also taught me is she's taught me the value of sharing our stories and our humanity with other people. Because we relate to other people through our stories and we see ourselves in other people's struggles, even though they might be different than ours. It's a shared human experience. And the reality is that no one has it all together or all figured out. Anyone that is pretending is a filtered version of themselves, and I'm calling BS on it. And so it can be super helpful when we're in that comparison mode or thinking that it's just us to remember it's not, and that most people want realness and authenticity over polish and perfection any day of the week. And so, what I hope that you can take away from my story, from Ruth Bader Ginsburg's legacy, and from the incredible work of Brene Brown is the value of owning who we are and embracing our humanity rather than fighting it. And I'm so thankful that this is the work that we get to do each and every day at Salveo Partners with leaders and with teams. And let me tell you, it is so incredible when people are equipped with core and common language and tools to get out of their own way and to start showing up more courageously and authentically. So here's my invitation to you. What can you do with all of this? Well, the next time you find yourself holding back, triggered, or playing it safe and small, I encourage you to think about, what does your 10-year-old self need to hear? Perhaps it's something similar to mine. You don't have to be perfect. You are enough. And believe me, you matter. And then think about what your colleague or neighbor or friend's 10-year-old self needs to hear. And let's stop fighting and mean girling, and let's start caring for and treating one another in a way that helps us heal and thrive and connect, so that we can move beyond our childhood insecurities and that flawed programming and start to let our courageous, connected, kick ass adult version usher us into a new and brighter future. I know it's possible. I've seen it happen. And I think this is what's going to propel us forward and be our legacy. And so, with that, I want to leave you with one of my favorite quotes from Debbie Ford. She says, "The greatest act of courage is to be and own all of who you are, without apology, without excuses, without masks to cover the truth of who you are." Or, as I love to say, never ever let anyone dull your sparkle. Thank you for being here with me today, and go out and make a difference in your world.